Nia Jordan had become an expert in silence. The kind of silence that stretches across years, that screams between heartbeats. To the outside world, she was the image of success. A beautiful, poised African-American woman in her early 30s, married to a man the city adored. Terrence Jordan was polished, generous. A tech mogul turned philanthropist who smiled for the camera like a man with nothing to hide. But behind their gated home in Charlotte, behind the manicured hedges and the designer curtains, Nia lived like a ghost inside her own life. Terrence had learned long ago how to hurt without leaving marks. His cruelty was calculated. His anger wrapped in velvet. His punishments veiled as love. He isolated her, made her doubt herself, watched her every move. When she cried, he called her dramatic. When she stayed silent, he called her cold. She learned to lie fluently, first to others, then to herself. But somewhere deep beneath the fear, a small fire never went out. It whispered to her in the dark. You are still alive. You still belong to yourself. She didn't leave all at once. You can't walk away from a man like Terrence Jordan. You vanish. She began building the illusion of her death 2 years before it ever happened. Early morning jogs became reconnaissance missions. She learned to spoof GPS data, reroute IP addresses, create banking histories for people who didn't exist. She studied people who had disappeared and stayed gone. She trained herself not to flinch, not to cry, not to hesitate. The morning of her death, she stood at the edge of Lake Norman, heart thrashing like a caged bird. She wore a jacket soaked in fake blood. It was her blood type, but not hers. She left it on the boat with a note that read, I'm sorry. I just couldn't keep pretending. She dropped her wedding ring in the water. The ripples swallowed it whole. Terrence played his role perfectly. He cried on the news, pleaded for answers, hugged her mother with fake compassion. But no body surfaced. And after a week, the world began to move on. Nia did not. In Asheville, she became Danielle Rivers, a quiet woman with auburn hair and a gift for painting. She rented a small apartment above a ceramics shop and started attending evening classes filled with retirees and hobbyists. For the first time in her adult life, she could breathe without asking permission. Freedom, she learned, was not loud. It was morning light on hardwood floors. It was silence that didn't scare her. It was walking home at night without checking over her shoulder. It was the smile of a stranger who wanted nothing from her. It was choosing what music to play, how to wear her hair, when to laugh. But trauma is not a switch. It is a shadow. Some nights, she'd wake drenched in sweat, Terrence's voice still sharp in her ears. Some days, she'd pause before turning a doorknob, convinced he was on the other side. She carried those memories like old bruises under her skin, faded but not forgotten. 6 months after her death, she found a letter waiting at her door. No stamp, no return address, just her name. Not Danielle, Nia. Inside was a single photo. She was in it, laughing in the window of the ceramics shop. But behind her, reflected faintly in the glass, stood a figure she knew in her bones. Terrence. She ran to the bathroom and vomited. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. He had found her. She had no interest in disappearing again. Not now. Not after she had tasted life. So she did what she hadn't done the first time. She fought. She contacted the only person she had ever trusted with the truth. Her former therapist, Dr. Renee Whitman. Together they contacted a domestic violence network, then the FBI. Nia handed them a drive filled with everything she had collected over the years. Audio recordings, bank records, photos of injuries with timestamps, threats scrawled on post-its she had once hidden in her coat lining. The trap was simple. She allowed herself to be seen. Uploaded a photo of her at an art show, location tagged. The bait was irresistible. He came for her 2 nights later. She watched from a nearby room as he broke into her apartment. His face was calm, predatory. He looked around like he owned the place. Then the lights flicked on. Federal agents swarmed the room. He didn't fight. He just smiled and said, "You think this ends with me?" But it did. The trial was brutal. Her life became headlines. Reporters painted her as brave, tragic, mysterious. But she wasn't interested in being a symbol. She stood in that courtroom not as a victim, but as a survivor who refused to be erased. Terence was sentenced to 35 years. Other women came forward. His empire crumbled. His charm was exposed for what it was: venom wrapped in silk. When it was over, she didn't go back to being Danielle. She became Nia again. Not the Nia who flinched at shadows. Not the Nia who apologized for breathing. This Nia walked into the sunlight and didn't look over her shoulder. She opened her own art studio and taught girls from shelters how to paint through their pain. She bought a little rescue dog and named him Phoenix. She laughed loudly, loved slowly, and lived deliberately. Sometimes she'd stand by a lake, not the one from her past, but a new one, and let the wind touch her face. She remembered who she had been. And then she let her go.